The air in the empty office carried a silence that was anything but gentle. It was taut, like a stretched string ready to snap into a sharp sound at the slightest touch. And then it did, a command, short, hard, slicing through the stillness like glass striking stone. Undress, now, in the secretary's office. Find something appropriate. Quickly, you have 10 minutes. Pavel Andreevich spoke without even the shadow of hesitation, the way only those who are used to their words becoming law can speak. Irina did not argue, did not ask a question, did not even change the expression on her face. She only gave a small nod, as if the gesture were mechanical while her gaze remained lost somewhere in an inner fog. Behind layers of memories and voices hiding a part of her story she had no intention of sharing. Pavel Andreevich Strukov entered the building of his business empire with the peculiar kind of assurance that belongs to a man who has not heard the word no in years. His steps on the marble floor were measured, each one like a deliberate note in the score of a well-practiced morning ritual. The expensive suit sat flawlessly, the leather briefcase in his hand. Was not merely an accessory, but a badge of belonging to a closed world of those who do not ask, they take. And perhaps that was why his irritation flared so sharply and instantly when, in the wide lobby, his eyes caught the bent figure of a woman in a grey cleaner's uniform, her mop cutting across the polished expanse like an unwelcome stroke on a perfect canvas. He almost stepped onto a wet patch, and only the quick, almost imperceptible movement of her hand saved him from the indignity of a slip. She said quietly, careful, but he was already giving her that cold, narrowed look that always carries the unspoken question, "What are you doing here, in my world?" With a brief, irritated remark about staying out of his way, he walked toward the elevator. His morning was timed to the minute, and ahead of him lay not just negotiations, but a collision of interests in which even the smallest disruption could cost too much. The three partners, Safronov, Nalivkin, and Gelman, had long ceased to be allies. Their smiles had become too even, their voices too cautious. He had seen the sidelong glances exchanged behind his back and knew that this meeting would not be a mere business discussion. It would be an attempt to wrench power away from him. And then there was Yana, his assistant, who had called the night before with a hoarse, feverish voice, saying she was bedridden with a temperature of nearly 40 degrees. No replacement could be found in time, and when he turned in the lobby, his eyes once again fell on the cleaner, standing by the wall with her mop pressed to her chest. A few quick questions: her name, how long she had worked there, whether she could conduct herself with restraint and without unnecessary chatter. Her answers were calm, her voice steady, and lacking that trembling yes, of course so many used to please superiors. He told her to go to the secretary's office, make herself presentable, and return in 10 minutes. She came back in 7. A white blouse, a dark pencil skirt, neatly gathered hair, and suddenly the nondescript woman from earlier was gone. In her place stood a figure with a quiet, unshakable self-possession, the kind that needs no ornament to be noticed. The conference room was cold and spacious, with panoramic windows through which the city looked in with a grim, early light. The black, glass table reflected faces like a mirror that showed not the people but their intentions. The 3 men entered as if stepping onto a stage where every word would be a weapon. And in the very first lines, behind the soft formulations and measured pauses, Pavel heard the truth. They had come for his share. He listened, keeping his composure, while Irina poured water as though that were the sole reason for her presence. But when Gelman, wearing his lazy smirk, addressed her, she lifted her eyes, unhurried, calm, and spoke words that landed on the table like a heavy weight. She had heard louder, growling scene worse especially. In the bankruptcy courts where partners like them tear each other apart. Then, almost casually, she remarked that on his desk earlier she had seen documents, nothing less than an attempt at a forced buyout of assets, which, she reminded them, under the law amounted to corporate blackmail. For a moment, Pavel's gaze turned razor-sharp. He reached for the papers, flipped through them, and understood. She was right. In an instant, the balance of power in the room shifted. Minutes later, the investors were gone, leaving behind only the cold promise of a future strike. When silence returned, he sat across from her, and for the first time his voice carried no note of command, only a quiet, heavy interest. She told him about her past, about the divorce, the war with her former partner, the loss of everything, and how she had chosen the silence of a job where no one would betray her. He offered her a place, not as an assistant, but as an advisor, someone he could trust to guard his back. And she agreed, without hesitation, like a person who knows her steps will always be deliberate. A year passed. Her name now hung on the door beside his, and her steps through the corridor were accompanied by respect. But one day, while helping a young secretary with a jammed printer tray, she noticed a massive ring on the girl's finger, engraved with the crest of one of the oldest investment groups. The girl, smiling faintly, gave an evasive answer to her question about it, and in that moment, without changing her expression, Irina understood. The new game had already begun.